Next item, the Onehunga branch line, considerations and future. Christian and Mark are thinking coming up here, and the backdrop to this is that we did have a request from Councillor Bartley and Lee earlier in the year as to the future of this important line. So I'll hand over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the purpose of this paper is to just give an update on our current plans and thinking around rail services on the Onehunga line, to be operated during, at the moment, the CRL construction, but also post-CRL opening as well. I'd like to take the report as read. There are the options in there, 5 options, which we have considered, but Christian has got a short presentation which we can go through very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. So, just wanted to go through the current state of the Onehunga branch line and explain the why we are operating what we are operating now. So, the Onehunga branch is a spur from the southern line, and it's a single line. So due to the configuration of the infrastructure, we cannot run trains less than 30 minutes. So every increase of frequency would require huge investments, a passing loop, but also something at the junction with the southern line, such as a flyover or 4 tracks. Another thing is the platforms on the Onehunga branch are limited to 3-car trains, so that limits the capacity of what we can run on the line. To explain the plan for the services on that branch, we need to look at a network level. And that's the rail network as it is now, before the opening of CRL. The services that we run on the network right now are these. The first, the Western Line. The trains come from Swanston and past Grafton, they enter Newmarket Station. And then they turn back to reach Waitemata. So that is very important because that has been operating like that for a decade, and habits have been formed, and the Western Line customers are using the Western Line to reach Grafton for education purpose, St. Peter's, but also for work. There is the hospital not far, and to Newmarket for retail and jobs. The second service, we operate on the network, the Eastern Line. The fourth one is the Southern Line and the Onehunga branch. So you see also that Waitemata being a terminating station, you need a lot of platforms because you've got 4 different services reaching Waitemata right now. So currently we have 5 platforms at Waitemata, 4 for the services and 1 for resilience and peak to off-peak overlay. So during the construction of CRL, a lot is happening at Waitemata. That is what Waitemata will look like when CRL opens. As I've already explained in this forum, City Rail Limited is decommissioning platform 2 because we need more space in the station when CRL opens, larger stairs. The plan is, when CRL is open in the near future, to rip platform 4 near to platform 3. So you will get the same width of platform between the terminating platforms and the through platforms who are going into the tunnel. So the constraint is that during these works, we will only have 3 platforms permanently available. 4 platforms plus including 1 for resilience and transition between peak and off-peak. Meaning that we are going from 5 down to 3 platforms for a short period of time with the services as we are currently operating. So our rail operator, Auckland One Rail, in their operation plan, have told us that they are not able to bring every services at Waitemata. So there is a trade-off that needs to be made, and the current situation is that most of the time the services from Onehunga will have to terminate either at Newmarket and Penrose, and customers will have to take the next train coming on the Southern Line. So that's during the construction. When CRL open, what happens? So we've got 3 new stations and a totally different network. That will enable us to operate a totally different pattern on the network. The first thing is that we will connect the Western Line and the Eastern Line. 1 train every 7 minutes and 30 seconds in the peak, and every 15 minutes off peak. So that will enable the customers on the Western Line to gain 17 minutes each way in their commute to the city centre. It will also enable the Eastern Line customers to reach directly Henderson, Kingsland, Mount Eden, and the Western Line customers to reach new opportunities directly on the Eastern Line, like Sylvia Park. The second thing, the Southern Line will operate as a loop in the CRL, 1 train every 7.5 minutes in the peak and 15 minutes off peak. And it's 1 train every other will go clockwise, and the other one will go anti-clockwise. So the thing is, with these services, you see there is a missing link in the services between Maungawhau and Grafton and Newmarket. So we need to solve that and do something to enable the Western Line customers who are currently using Grafton and Newmarket to reach those stations without having to turn back. So the variable with which we can play is the services from Henderson. And there are 5 options that we have explored, 3 which are feasible before CRL opens, but comes with trade-off, and 2, and I will explain later why, are not feasible under the current funding and in the current timeline. So the option 1, which is the preferred for the time being, is that the Onehunga services will run every 30 minutes from Henderson to Onehunga. The trade-off is that the Onehunga customers will have to change train on the same platform between Newmarket and Ellerslie, so either at Newmarket, Ellerslie, or Green Lane. But they will only have to wait for the next Southern train, so they will have to wait in average 3 minutes and 45 seconds. On the other side, they will gain direct access to Grafton and to Mount Eden, Kingsland, and up to Henderson. And also that's why we need a 3rd platform at Henderson, to enable the turn back. We need to note that there will still be an improvement from the current situation for the Onehunga customers when they want to travel to the Uptown or Midtown, to Waitemata, Karangahape. The next option would be to bring the Onehunga services to Waitemata. As it is now. The backdrop is that on the Western Line, if you want to go to Grafton or Newmarket, you need to go to Karangahape, wait 7.5 minutes in average for the next train, and turn back. That will also create some congestion on the Southern Line in the tunnel. And last but not least, there are 10 times more people living in the catchment of the Western Line stations than in the catchment of the Onehunga stations. The third option is to operate the Onehunga services through the tunnel to Henderson. Still, it doesn't solve the issue of the missing link. And it will also be more costly because we need more trains, and that will cost more to operate. The fourth option that will be explored, and unfortunately that is not feasible because we will need some additional infrastructure at Penrose, and this one doesn't solve the issue of the missing link. And the fifth option, which would be the best outcome from a customer service perspective, additional services from Henderson to Newmarket, in addition to direct services to Waitemata, currently are not feasible because of the congestion at Newmarket. So, in conclusion, for the time being, with the current funding, the current state of the infrastructure, option one is the option that we are working on to develop a timetable with our rail operator.
Thank you very much, Christian, for that, and Mark, for that presentation. Do we have questions now on what we've just heard, or anything associated? Councillor Bartley?
Thank you. So you're going to go out to consult on option one, not the other options. So how does the Onehunga community get to have a say on these options if they're only going to see option one, and the local board?
Yeah, we can present the alternative options, and we need also to go to the Western Line customers to present the same options. As I highlighted in the analysis, we need to address the missing gap between Maungawhau and Grafton and Newmarket for the Western Line customers, and currently, with the funding we have and the infrastructure that CRL is providing, option one is the only feasible option to address that missing link.
And did you ask about the local board too?
I did, yeah.
Are they to be brought into the loop here?
Are they?
Well, I'm asking.
They're not
Christian.
Currently.
Yeah. So can that be done, Christian? The local board can.
Yes, we will arrange a meeting and present the options to the local board.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Councillor Chair Watson. I guess my brief comment is this is sort of like with the new network with the buses on the busway. A lot of people didn't like the two bus, going from one long bus. But are you going to be able to tell a story of how this will actually benefit Onehunga users? Because actually the frequency and the time and the speed will mean they have far more access to far more things. It just won't often be a direct. And somehow we've got to tell that story like we did through the new network, because people were angry and then we had a 40% increase in use on those routes, I guess, which showed that people found it much better.
Yeah.
Councillor Hills. IMSB member Renata.
Tēnā kōrua. Can you confirm the likely impact of the recommended approach for those Māori living in that area?
Yes. Yeah. Based on the 2018 census, there are 8,900 Māori on the Western Line station's catchment. So these will gain 17 minutes in their journey on each way to go to the CBD. They will retain the direct access to Grafton and Newmarket. On the other side, in the catchment of Onehunga and Te Papapa stations, there are 1,000 Maori that will have to wait 3 minutes and 45 seconds to the next train on the same platform to reach the CBD.
Just one other, that's the statistics that you've given. How were Māori engaged in this plan in terms of to the recommended approach that you've placed forward? How were they actually engaged?
So two things. The first thing is that the plan is consistent with the 2018 regional public transport plan, and at that time there has been consultation with everyone. I haven't had time to find the exact input that we have received back in 2017 and 2018 on this, but we will come back to you on that. Specifically on this one, we haven't engaged with the local boards, the general public, the Maori yet.
Yeah, it's just, it's how to actually, for Māori patronage, on the line, it's quite difficult to see what that would look like.
We can come back with a written response just to clarify the statistics we provided.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Renata. So I think we're just about at the end of the questions here. If we put the recommendations up, Councillor Lee and Bartley, you had a suggestion. Okay, but I think that...
Is it up there? Or
it's not up there. I think part of it has been answered in terms of the consultation, hasn't it? They will be going out to consult with the community over the next couple of years. Is that correct, Christian?
As soon as we have the confirmation from our rail operator that we have a timetable in addition to the plan, yes.
Yeah. Okay. As far as opening the line immediately goes, I think that question would have to be posed to them whether they can do that or not. I'm in your hands. Councillor Lee, do you want to just speak to the existing recommendations, or is there anything else you want to add there? I'm just.
I understand there's another recommendation in the pipeline.
Yeah. Well,
I'll speak to.
Well,
we need to move
I'll
on.
speak to what we have up here. I just.
Sorry, Mike, we just have to move and second this.
Okay.
As it stands before we speak to it. Do you want to move that, Councillor Lee and Bartley?
So we're not going to put up the amendment?
Well, we can put the amendment up, but I think half of it has been addressed, and the other half I don't think they can do. But please, can we put the amendment up so we can at least get a sense of we can move and second the substantive. So do we have two people to do that?
I'm happy to move.
Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Hills, and then we can put up the amendment, which will be Councillor Bartley and Councillor Lee. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So can we put that up, please? And we might have. I'm just signaling we might have to seek a bit of guidance on that, whether it's actually possible. But
I could provide a brief comment on that. I think we did cover it in the report, Chair. It is physically possible to put the Onehunga rail services back in there, but other services would have to be removed, and that would reduce patronage and disadvantage more people, because there is physically less platforms to receive all these services during the construction of the Britomart.
okay, so we've got the amendment there, Councillor Bartley and Lee. We've heard what Mark Lambert has said in respect of what that would mean. So I guess that we'll have to take that into account, but it's up there. It's theoretically possible, but it does have consequences for the rest of the network. So with that said, Councillor Bartley or Lee, do you want to speak to your amendment?
Yes, thank you. Really, I know that it's about the regional benefit in terms of patronage and rail services, but at the same time, I represent Onehunga. I'm the councillor for that area. So what they've told me very, very loudly is that they want their services reinstated from the Onehunga line to Waitemata. So I have to, I have to put voice to what my community has asked for. There are so many reasons why we need efficient, effective public transport options for Onehunga. We've had to lose some of our bus services for the regional benefit in terms of the bus network route changes. And now with the rail service, I mean, it was only every 30 minutes, but if there was a way that it could be improved, then you would get much more uptake from the local community there who are already loyal to that service anyway. We've got so much intensification, and this is just private intensification in the Onehunga and surrounding area with Fabric, Onehunga Mall, Manaki, Onehunga Bay Terraces. The schools are expecting an 8,000 increase in their population by 2030. Overall, Onehunga One Tree Hill is going to increase by up to 34,000 from the current 24,000 population. So there is a great need there for our rail service and our bus services. And in terms of our rail line, there are other options that I see community have been putting up, for instance, like a shuttle from Onehunga to Penrose, and there are concerns about the transfers, and there's no cover on the stations, and there's safety concerns when the service is cancelled. They've got to walk through an industrial area at night to get back to Onehunga. So all these concerns, residents that have bought into the area on the basis of there being efficient public transport in the area, and now losing that direct line into Waitemata, losing the direct line into the Civic Centre with their 312 flyer bus service. So, you know, it's taking a few hits for regional benefit, and so that's why I do appreciate Councillor Lee bringing up this amendment, which I, of course, have to support as the councillor for the area, and acknowledging his work in reopening the Onehunga line in 2010, from when it originally started in stopped in 1973, and how this is actually the first rail line for the city. So, yeah, thank you. That's all I've got to say.
Councillor Lee?
Mr. Chair, Councillor Bartley is quite right. It was the earliest line for the city, and it was closed down in 1973, and it was after quite a long public campaign that the Auckland Regional Council and ATA and Kiwi Rail recommissioned and reopened the line in 2010. And it would be fair to say, Mark, that while the public was really keen on it, officialdom wasn't that keen. It seems to me, sadly, that situation hasn't changed when it comes to the Onehunga branch line. We are dealing with two aspects here: the present service, or what was the present service, and then post CRL. And the City Rail Link obviously is going to have a big impact on the Onehunga branch services, and as set out in this report, not probably as people had hoped. Now, the CRL itself was quite controversial in its beginnings. The mayor of the time, Len Brown, supported it. The government of the day did not. The board of ATA, of Auckland Transport, was brand new, and the board of Auckland Transport would have been guided by the council. The predecessor to this committee was also divided on the CRL, but a majority of it supported it, and so the board of AT was able to adopt it and push it, supported by the Mayor of Auckland, and eventually the government changed its mind in light of public opinion. However, as in the original business case of the CRL, there were funds included in that, in the costs, for upgrading.
Just continue, Councillor.
I'll continue when the officials are listening, because
They're trying to actually aid your cause, but if you want to wait, fair enough. Yeah, I know, but this is an unusual. Yeah. Oh, for goodness sake.
Can I suggest, Mr Chair, that we actually just take an actual adjournment, because it sounds
okay,
like if you're going to wordsmith
I will
this.
resume, if I may. Thank you. In the original business case of the CRL, there were, a part of the costs, 2.4 billion, were money allocated for upgrading the Onehunga branch line. However, what has happened since is that the line operated as designed from 2010 to June 2022. It contributed 5% of the patronage of the total in Auckland, which was 21 million at that time prior to COVID, and proportionately in terms of the catchment, the public take-up of rail PT in the Onehunga area and along that line was higher than anywhere else. However, without notice, in June or July actually 2022, a few months ago, last year, the services were truncated and in effect terminated at Newmarket. People were ushered off the trains. The trains carried on down past Parnell Station and stopped at the Strand, and that was because of temporary work in the CRL. There was, when this happened, the Public Transport Users Association and Campaign for Better Transport became involved, along with Councillor Bartley, and there was some polling done outside the Onehunga station. At that time, over 1 week, there were 209 responses. 95% of people complained that there was no consultation. 86% of the patrons opposed the terminations of services at Newmarket, and there was consequently about a 20% loss of patronage as a result of that decision. The report says here on Executive Summary Point 2, before the construction of the City Rail Link, CRL, services were operated to the Waitemata station, that was formerly Waitemata, every 30 minutes. Well, that's misleading. Construction of the CRL started in June 2016. And so these services at Onehunga operated for years and years after that. A decision was taken by AT and CRL Limited, presumably to chop those services years after the CRL was being constructed. So it doesn't necessarily work with the beginning of the construction of the CRL. I'm concerned that we have a public transport crisis, as I mentioned earlier. Our current rail public transport, which costs us way more than buses, which are expensive enough, we're currently spending billions on rail. are less than half of what they were, so less than 50% of what they were pre-COVID. I think we need to do everything we can to restore those services. And as Councillor Darby mentioned earlier, it's essential that we exceed where we were in late 2019. And I therefore support the amendment for this reason, because the public want those services restored. In terms of climate action, electric trains are probably the best way, or a single way of dealing with transport-generated carbon emissions, and we should be doing something about it. What is physically possible should be politically possible, and this is physically possible if there is a will. What happens after the CRL is a different question. It seems to me that there is a bunch of options there, and what hasn't really been explained that well is that one of the penalties, the negatives of the CRL, will be that the service from Newmarket west and vice versa will be cut in effect by the CRL. It will mean people from the west will be able to get to the city 20 minutes quicker, but in terms of getting to the Newmarket with great difficulty, and that is a genuine problem that I think we need to work on together. The Onehunga services apparently will be sacrificed to try and solve that problem. That may be the only option, but that will happen after the CRL becomes operable, which, as Mr. Potter explained to us very carefully, that doesn't mean immediately after the CRL is completed. It may be months after, according to Mr. Potter. So we have some time. So there was two aspects to the amendment, and that is to call upon Auckland Transport to resume those services as called for by the public, and then to genuinely consult with the public about the various options, and we have some years to do it, how we solve the problem of Onehunga and Western services, and come up with a win-win if we possibly can. That will require a genuine, open sort of consultation rather than a fait accompli, take it or leave it, and we're in charge, have your say and we will have your way, which has all too often been the way that consultations have been carried on in the past. So I support the amendment.
With the permission of the meeting and the mover and the seconder, I think and this is unusual, so I'm asking for a departure from procedure here. Otherwise, we just have our debate and vote on it in a bit of an information void. I've heard the request. I think that the second part has been answered to an extent, but I guess what hasn't become made clear to us is what is the ability to impose immediate restoration of the Onehunga rail services. I mean, that's important. We really need to know that, don't we? So Councillor Lee and Bartley, is it okay with you if we allow the officers to speak to that? I'm really in your hands as far as that goes.
Yeah, I'm happy for that, yeah.
Councillor Lee?
Fine.
Okay, all right. So you've seen the amendment, Mark and Christian. So what we're just looking for is a reasonably succinct explanation as to the first part of the amendment here, the requesting the immediate restoration of the Onehunga line and what that would mean and how possible it is. Thank you.
So as I think we explained at the last meeting and in this paper, the issue is the capacity of Britomart during the current construction works through to opening of CRL. There's physically not enough space or train slots to put all services in there as there was before the construction work started, so something has to be removed. We've made the call to terminate Onehunga services at Newmarket as opposed to Britomart, and so therefore Onehunga customers have to transfer at Newmarket to complete their journey at Britomart. That's currently in place at the moment. If we were to put those services 2 per hour back into Britomart from Newmarket all the way, then we would have to cancel 1 or 2 other services to allow that space. That's the simple physics facts that we would have to do. And if we were going to do that, we would, I would assume, would be expected to consult with the Western and Southern Line customers as to whether we should do that. We have purposely chosen to terminate 2 trains per hour from Onehunga at Newmarket as opposed to Britomart to maximise patronage and utilisation. If we did anything else, because there are 3 trains per hour, not 6 trains per hour on the Onehunga line, we would be reducing in the short term the capacity of Britomart and reducing patronage.
Okay, thank you for that, for making that clear. If you wouldn't mind stepping back now, and thank you.
That's not true.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr Chair, before they step back, I had a question of officers.
Just hold it,
Christian knows
please.
the truth.
Okay, we've had the explanation. We'll resume the debate. People, of course, are quite free to vote whatever way they've got. I've got a number of speakers here. I think Councillor Fletcher, you were the first. Turner, Baker.
Mr Chair,
Mills
mine
and
was
Dodd.
actually a question.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'd like to exercise my right with a question, if I may. It may be a question to Mr Potter, if you
If it's a
prefer.
question to help this, I mean, really, if we, these sort of questions should have been asked during the question time. So I'm just trying to make sure everyone's voting with their eyes open. That's what I'm trying to do. I will, in these unusual circumstances, please ask Barry.
Thank you, Mr Chair.
Well, there
And
is.
may I put it in the context of the immense sympathy that I have for Councillor Bartley and Councillor Lee, and particularly in the case of Councillor Lee, I know the passionate advocacy that he brought prior to amalgamation and then on continuation of amalgamation to the Onehunga line, and I had the advantage of sitting on the board of Auckland Transport with him, where he was very strong on this point. My questions are, perhaps Barry, you can answer. When we have a matter that is very important like this, the policy around unfunded items, in part, I don't feel comfortable in voting on the amendment without actually having an understanding about the options around the funding matters. And secondly, is there a policy position that has been adopted? I understand the arguments that have been posed in and around patronage, but is there any positioning with regards this decision that is to do with proposed light rail and options into the future?
Excuse me, taking a second. Look, I'm unaware of any implications of this for light rail. I can't comment specifically on that, but I wouldn't have thought so. With regard to the first, we haven't had any advice from AT in terms of any cost implications of this, any loss of revenue from other lines or anything like that. So we have no advice from AT in terms of the financial implications of a decision like this, in terms of revenue or operating costs or anything else.
So in previous councils, when there are unfunded items and the unfunding references are made within the report, we've had the opportunity of going away and having a look at that matter and for the matter to be returned. I'm trying to be helpful here, Mr Chairman. I'm interested to know what the options are for those of us who feel that there isn't adequate information on this today, and what the implications would be if this matter were deferred to come back to the next meeting of Transport and Infrastructure with more information being available.
Through the chair, this is mostly at this point an advisory paper. There's no hard decision required, and we could ask AT to come back with further guidance on that, understanding of the costs and revenues and operational implications before that motion is considered.
Okay, thanks for those questions. Do the mover and seconder want to take up that offer of bringing this back with more detail, or do you want to proceed as is?
This is only a request to restore the services that we've had since 2010. That's all it is. In terms of funding, the Auckland Council spends a lot of money with Auckland Transport to maintain rail services. So there's no reason, it's not that it's a question of not being funded, it's a question whether it's physically possible. And I have good advice, including from within AT, that it is physically possible.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go, okay, it's answered, so we'll go back to the speaking order then. I've tried to make things clear. So Councillor Turner, Fletcher, Baker, Hills and Dalton.
Thank you. I support this. This is Auckland. We're all in this together. No one should be left out. Onehunga isn't going to be left out for paying for all this, that's for sure. So I'm not here to pick winners and losers. We share in the whole thing. Our problem with paying for it is our problem. The unforeseen variations in building it is AT's problem. And so I support everyone being treated equally, and they should be allowed access to their train if it's at all possible. Thank you.
Councillor Fletcher?
Yes.
No, thank you. Councillor Baker?
Yeah, so I'm not going to support it, and just picking up on, they still have an access to a train, Ken, it stops at Newmarket. So the people of Onehunga still have access. People of Pukekohe don't have an access. They've been taken out for 2 years because of the need, and they've accepted that grudgingly and are looking at a 5-hour door-to-door daily commute time when stage 4, unless we can find something. So to say that Onehunga don't have a train service is wrong. And so, as we've heard, I trust and I accept the advice we have had given. I don't see any point in asking Auckland Transport staff to waste time coming back here to repeat what they have already said today, that if they put in a service into from Onehunga to Waitemata, other services will suffer. And so there is a service. We are besotted, and we seem to have entitlement in this country and in this city that we will have a one-seat journey in our public transport go anywhere in the world where they have top-class public transport. There is no expectation you will get from one side of the city on to the other by sitting in a single seat. Yet we sit here, and people who get close to me when they want to have a chat about this, cop it. We sit there and think that we have the entitlement to get on a train or a bus and have it take us from point A to point B where we want it to go. That cannot happen in this sort of organisation that we have as we move towards a world-class public transport system. It's just something we've got to get our heads around, and I just do not accept, sorry Ken, the whole thing about this is about giving everyone an option. They've got an option. It will be better at the end. This is a little bit of pain for some very, very outstanding long-term gain. And I did have written down here, what are the opportunities should there be a light rail system and replication and better services? I don't know for the people of Onehunga and other parts, but I won't be supporting this because there is a service and we've just got to move on.
Point taken.
Councillor Hills?
Thank you, Chair. No, I can't support it for similar reasons to Councillor Baker, and I understand where Councillor Lee and Councillor Bartley are coming from. It is just, and I've asked this last year when it happened. The graph sort of looks like this: the people affected on the Onehunga line, or if it switches, the people affected like this. So there's 3 lines versus 1, and it will make it more effective at the end because that whole connection in will be far more frequent, 50% or 100% increase in access to different parts of the network. It does bring up the fact of other lines that we're going to need in the future, like the light rail lines, because we can't keep pumping more rapid rail can't keep pouring more hoses into the same bucket, essentially. So it just doesn't work like that. So I feel for the people who are going to be affected, who are being affected by this, but just like I was speaking to the officers when the new network happened on the shore, a lot of people complained about having to connect and then at the end A lot of people found it more convenient because there was more frequent buses going to the busway, getting on and off, and they had more choice of how to get around. So the officers are trying their best to work on a system that we have kicked off with this project. So I can't support this and will support the original amendment. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dalton, could you round off the debate on the amendment,
Yes,
please?
thank you. Thank you, Chair, and I will be quick again. Everything that Andy said, and just another thing in addition, every time we do something like this, we're creating a cost. Now, there were a whole lot of votes, a majority, for no more reports, no more new projects, nothing new. And the Mayor's been really, really clear about that. Every time we put something up like this as a cost, we're already short funding, so I can't support it for that reason as well. It's a principle I'm going to try and be consistent with, is not supporting more and more work to be done when we've said no to discretionary spend this financial year. We have got a tight next financial year, and heaven knows what the long-term plan is going to look like. So I just want to commend Councillor Bartley for how well she spoke for her community out there. Totally get it, Joe. And I'm sorry that this can't be supported. If we were in better financial times, I'd be right behind you, boots and all. So I can't support this. Thank you.
Miss Councillor Ferry, could you finish us off?
Thank you. I wish the opportunity for an adjournment for some wordsmithing had been taken, because I think we probably could have found something that spoke to the intent but didn't actually put us in the situation of requesting something that AT have already said no to, including in this meeting. My suggestion to the mover and seconder of the amendment is that we look at wording that says request improvements to the Onehunga to Waitemata connection, ideally through reinstatement of direct Onehunga rail services and consultation over the next 2 years, etc. I don't know if that's considered friendly by the mover or the seconder, but yeah. Would either of you be interested in changing the wording in that way?
What does that do that this doesn't?
It means that we're not directly asking for something that AT have already said no to. We've said that would be the ideal outcome, but it's not necessarily the only outcome. We're asking for improvements to the Onehunga to Waitemata connection, and we're indicating that that would be the ideal, but acknowledging that that's not necessarily the only option, given that they've told us that it's not a viable option. If you don't want to incorporate it, that's fine. I just wanted to make the suggestion as a compromise.
I think we have tried to make some suggestions, so I think we've been there.
All right, I withdraw. Thank you.
Yeah.
The improvement the public want is the restoration of their direct connection, because most people polled supported a direct connection from Queensland Onehunga to Queensland.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's a trouble, isn't it? Okay, so the amendment has been moved, it's been seconded, or taken on the voices. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
I declare it lost. We return to the substantive motion. Is there any debate required on the substantive? No. The substantive should be up there. It's the same as the recommendations in your paper. Moved by Councillor Fletcher, seconded by Councillor Hills. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Move on to the next